If you grew up anywhere near these mountains, you already know how it is. Folks don't sit around making up stories. They pass down the ones they can't forget. Tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? And what time is it for you right now? Kinda crazy when you think about it. All of us sitting in the dark, listening to the same story from different corners of the map. Go ahead and hit like and subscribe so more people can find their way into these woods, even if they probably shouldn't. All right, here we go. The cabin was cheap, almost offensively cheap. It sat buried in a hollow at the far edge of the Blue Ridge Mountains, about an hour outside of Roanoke. Some friend of a friend set up, one of those whispered arrangements that never really pass through official channels. The kind where someone leans in and says, "Hey, if you don't mind the spiders and no Wi-Fi, you can crash there for a while." Like they're offering you a favor wrapped in a warning. I didn't care. At the time, I was broke, worn out, and desperate to fall off the map for a bit. So when I heard about an unused cabin tucked in the hills, I stuffed my duffel, turned off my phone, and left the city before the sun had even climbed past the skyline. When I first pulled up, it wasn't much to look at. A single-story cabin leaning just slightly to one side, like it had given up on pretending to be level. The porch sagged in places, the boards creaked under my boots, and the roof looked one hard wind away from caving in. But it had 4 solid walls, a small stove that worked after a few curses and kicks, and a bathroom that mostly did what bathrooms are supposed to do. It was enough. More than enough, really. There was nothing but endless pine, maple, and poplar on every side. A dense green isolation that swallowed the road as soon as I parked. No passing cars, no cell service, no human noise. Just wind threading through the trees and the distant chatter of unseen animals. It didn't take long to realize I wasn't completely alone. About a quarter-mile up the ridge sat an old trailer, half hidden by a wall of briars and overgrown ferns. The first time I saw it, I assumed it was abandoned. Its windows were fogged over with grime, the siding mottled with dark moss that climbed toward the roof. But on my 3rd day there, someone came out of the trees. No sound, no path, just appeared. Like the woods had spat him out whole. He was carrying a machete in one hand and a grocery bag bulging with cans in the other. He told me his name was Calvin. Said he'd lived on that ridge his whole life. He didn't offer a handshake or a smile, just spoke in this flat, low tone that didn't seem to rise or fall. His eyes didn't blink much either, and when they did, it was slow, deliberate. The kind of blinking you notice because it happens so rarely. I wouldn't say we became friends, but we weren't strangers. He helped me clear a tree that had fallen across the gravel road after a thunderstorm, his machete slicing through branches with almost unnatural precision. He barely spoke as we worked, just nodded when I asked questions, and moved with the kind of rhythm that comes from muscle memory more than thought. After that, I'd see him sometimes, drifting through the forest alone. Always alone, always with purpose, like he was following a map no one else could see. He talked about the woods the way other people talk about family. Intimate, possessive. He seemed to know every spring, every rock face, every strange turn in the terrain. Sometimes he'd say things that stuck with me for reasons I didn't understand. The earth breathes slow after a storm, or the stones remember where we've walked. Once, when I stumbled upon a row of small, carefully balanced rock stacks by the creek, I asked him if he made them. He looked at them for a long moment and said only, "They're memory markers." Then he turned and disappeared back into the trees. That was Calvin. He gave you half a story and left the other half to rot in your imagination. Then, one day, he was gone. There was no noise, no signs of a struggle, Nothing cinematic about it. He just stopped appearing. I didn't notice right away. Maybe he'd gone into town. Maybe he'd decided to hole up for a while. But after 4 or 5 days, the silence changed. It wasn't the kind of quiet that came from solitude anymore. It was the kind that presses against your ears, that kind that feels aware. There were no boot prints near the spring anymore, no faint smell of cigarette smoke wafting through the trees, no echo of his humming, a low, tuneless sound I used to catch drifting down the ridge at dusk. The forest felt emptied out, like something had inhaled and never exhaled again. I went up to the trailer one afternoon. The air felt heavier the closer I got. The clearing was overgrown now, weeds climbing up the metal siding. The fire pit out front was buried in a bed of gray ash, like no flame had touched it in weeks. I stood there for a while, listening. Nothing. No scuffling raccoon, no birds, not even the lazy buzz of a fly. Just the static of silence. After a few minutes, I left. Told myself it wasn't my problem. But that night, sleep wouldn't stick. Every time I drifted close, I'd jolt awake to the echo of something moving just beyond the cabin walls. Then, sometime past midnight, I heard it. Footsteps. Slow, measured, circling the cabin on the gravel. The crunch of small stones shifting under weight. My eyes snapped open. The air felt wrong, too still, too focused. I sat up, holding my breath. The steps came again, sliding along the side of the cabin. I crept to the window, pulling back the curtain just enough to peek out. Nothing. No flashlights, no headlights. Just an ocean of black trees pressing up against the world. Then, 3 soft knocks at the back door. That door didn't open to anywhere. Just a steep slope that dropped into a mess of underbrush so thick you couldn't walk through it without tripping. No one should have been standing there. Not unless they'd clawed their way up through the brush in the dark. Another knock. Then stillness. I didn't turn on any lights. Just moved through the room barefoot, every step a whisper. I stopped at the back door, hand hovering over the handle. Something told me not to open it. Then I did. Just a crack. Enough to see a face pressed close to the screen. It was Calvin. His skin was gray and stretched tight like parchment, his eyes wide and unblinking. When he smiled, it was wrong. Forced, crooked, like he'd forgotten how to move his face and was trying to remember the motion. His voice came out thin, papery. "Dropped something," he said. "Up by the spring. Got a flashlight?" The way he said it wasn't casual. It was like he was repeating a line someone had fed him. Like he was reading from memory rather than speaking. I froze. My flashlight was still on the table behind me. I hadn't seen him in nearly a week, and now he was here, asking me to follow him into the woods in the middle of the night. Every instinct screamed at me to close the door, but some small, traitorous part of me felt sorry for him, or maybe afraid of what would happen if I refused. So I grabbed the flashlight and stepped outside. The air was colder than it should have been. We walked wordlessly up the trail, the beam of light shaking in my hand. No wind, no crickets, no rustling. Just the crunch of our footsteps. I kept waiting for him to explain what he'd lost, but he just kept walking. His eyes never moved, fixed straight ahead like a compass needle pointing somewhere unseen. We passed the spring, the one he'd mentioned, but he didn't stop. The water glimmered faintly in the light, but he didn't look down. "You said you dropped something," I whispered. He paused, tilted his head and mumbled. "Might have dropped it farther in." But his eyes, they weren't looking at me or the trail. They were fixed on something deeper in the woods, something I couldn't see. His voice sounded strained, like every word was pulled through water. I slowed down. My legs felt heavy, my heart beat loud enough to hear in my throat. "Calvin," I said quietly, "this doesn't feel right." He turned toward me, just stood there, staring. The light hit his face full on. His pupils didn't shrink. His breath came slow and rough, like he was forcing himself to breathe at all. "Take this," I said, holding the flashlight out to him. "I'm going back." He didn't move. The smile slipped away. His jaw tensed, muscles twitching under the skin as if something underneath was shifting. He just stared, not at me, but through me. I couldn't stand it. I turned and started walking, fast but steady, every sound amplified. The leaves crunching, the gravel shifting, my breath shaking. I didn't run. I couldn't. It felt like if I did, something behind me would start running too. When I finally reached the cabin, I risked one glance back. Nothing. Just darkness. I slammed the door shut, bolted it, drew the curtains, and sat with my back against the wall. The flashlight beam painted trembling circles across the floor as I waited for morning. I didn't sleep, not even when the sky began to pale and the birds started singing again, tentative and cautious, like they weren't sure it was safe yet. When daylight finally filled the clearing, I went back up to the trailer. Slowly, carefully. Every twig snap made me flinch. The air was thick with the smell of damp earth and rot. The trailer looked the same, but older somehow. The steps were blanketed with dry leaves, no footprints. The door hung slightly open. I stood there listening, waiting for some sign of life. A cough, a shuffle, a sound. Nothing. I couldn't bring myself to look inside. That night, I stayed awake again, sitting in the dark, flashlight in hand. The woods were quiet, no footsteps, no knock. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still out there, just beyond where the light could reach. I waited until sunrise, then packed my things, everything I could fit into my car, and left the rest. I didn't leave a note, didn't tell anyone. I just got in the car and drove. When I hit the highway, I made the mistake of looking in the rearview mirror. For a second, just one, I thought I saw him. Standing at the tree line where the gravel met the woods, still in gray, his head tilted just slightly, like he was watching the car leave. The image flickered, gone the next moment. Maybe it was a trick of light. Maybe not. Either way, I didn't stop. I kept driving until the mountains disappeared behind me and the signal bars on my phone came back. But I never turned it on. Sometimes, at night, when the wind hits the side of my apartment just right, I swear I hear it again. That soft crunch of footsteps circling slowly on gravel. And every time, I catch myself waiting for the knock that always comes in threes. I hiked the old way, with paper maps soft from being folded too many times, a military-grade compass that's never lied to me, and dogs I trust more than most people I've ever known. The Allegheny Mountains have places that seem allergic to being found. And over the years, I've learned to listen when the land starts whispering that I shouldn't push any farther. Late April, the kind of early spring where snow still clings in the shadows of the ridges, I decided to take my niece and nephew out for a long weekend. 3 days, 2 nights, in the high country west of Spruce Knob, close to the West Virginia border. It wasn't one of those glamorous national park setups with signage and trail markers. I'd found this basin a few years before, a quiet fold of earth carved deep between 2 ridge lines, so tucked away you couldn't spot it from anywhere above. No campsites, no fire rings, no proof that anyone had ever slept there. That's what drew me in, the promise of untouched silence. We packed light but careful. 2 tents, a 2-person dome for the kids, and a smaller one for me. Food sealed tight in a bare canister, a small propane stove, and my dog, Pike, a Dutch shepherd with more sense than most humans I've met. Pike wasn't a barky kind of dog. He only made noise when something truly needed your attention. He was built solid, and I'd seen him stare down coyotes without flinching. My niece Ava was 13 and full of stubborn confidence. She insisted on pitching her own tent that first evening, about 3 feet from mine. I liked her spirit. My nephew Jonah was 10, curious and quiet, the kind who listened more than he spoke. Pike curled up right at Ava's tent flap, tail curled over his nose, but his ears never relaxed. They stayed pointed toward the ridge behind us, the steep one cloaked in oak and hemlock, where the light barely touched the ground. That first night, I couldn't sleep. The forest was too still, like it was waiting for something. Around midnight, I was hovering in that half-dream state where your mind can't decide if it's asleep or on watch when I heard it. The sound of something moving through the trees. Not a scurry, not the scattered rhythm of a deer. This was deliberate. 1 step, 2, a long pause, then another. Heavy enough to press the leaves into the soil, but slow enough that each sound landed like it was testing the earth first. My body went cold. I didn't move, didn't breathe. My hand hovered over the .45 I kept beside my sleeping bag. Chambered, safety on. Pike's head lifted. He didn't growl. That was what scared me most. He just stared, muscles tight, eyes locked on the ridge. We waited like that for minutes, or maybe hours. The footsteps stopped, replaced by a silence so thick it had a sound of its own. The kind that hums in your ears because the forest itself refuses to speak. By dawn, the kids were still asleep. I slipped out, zipped my jacket tight, against the morning chill. Pike was already pacing in circles near Ava's tent, nose low to the ground, tracing an invisible line in the dirt. His movements were too exact, too investigative, not the random sniffing of a curious dog. I checked the slope above us. No tracks, no broken branches, nothing disturbed. Whatever had been out there hadn't left any proof of itself. We had breakfast, oatmeal with raisins and instant coffee for me, and tried to start the day normal. I led them on a short hike, maybe a 1/4 mile uphill through a narrow draw. The terrain tightened the higher we went. Trees crowding closer together like they were trying to keep something in. I told them to stick close, and for a while, it almost felt ordinary. Just another early spring hike. Then Pike froze. His body went rigid, tail straight, ears forward. A low, nearly inaudible growl rippled from his chest. Then, without warning, he bolted downhill, fast as I've ever seen him move. I dropped my pack and ran after him, calling his name. The sound bounced through the woods and came back smaller, swallowed by the trees. The air smelled wrong, wet and metallic, like rain on old iron. When I caught up, Pike was standing in the middle of what had once been a campsite. Only it didn't look like any campsite I'd ever seen. The tent, or what was left of it, was flattened and shredded into the dirt as if gravity had decided to crush it on purpose. Tarps hung in strips from the branches, fluttering weakly. A cooler sat crushed in on itself, one boot half buried in the muck nearby. A camping chair snapped in two. A cracked thermos with a faded sticker still clung to one side. It wasn't old. No moss, no leaves, no dusting of time. Whatever happened had happened recently, and violently. Pike stood in the center of the wreckage, silent, scanning the trees like he expected something to return. I called out, "Hello? Anybody here?" My voice came out too loud, too human. The sound didn't go far. It just died, muffled, like the woods didn't want it. No answer, not even an echo. The place felt wrong, like a wound that had already scabbed over. I backed away slowly, motioning for Pike to follow. When we got back to the kids, I didn't tell them what I'd found. Just said the terrain was unsafe and we needed to stay close to camp. That evening, the sun dipped fast. The air turned cold in minutes. I was cleaning out the pot from dinner when Jonah wandered behind a thicket to relieve himself. I barely looked up until Pike snapped his head toward the trees. His body stiffened, then he took off again, barking once, sharp and warning. I dropped everything and ran. I found Jonah first, pale, trembling. "Uncle Nate," he stammered. "There's something out there. I didn't see it, but it saw me." His voice cracked on the last word. Pike was deeper in the woods now, the sound of his movement fading fast. I called him 3 times before he came back, fur bristled, mouth slightly open, tongue dry. He didn't bark again, didn't even pant. He just stood there, staring at the trees like he was trying to understand something invisible. Back at camp, Ava sat with our other dog, Maple, a golden retriever with the temperament of a saint. Normally, she was restless, always sniffing, always looking for sticks to chew. But now she was still, body tense, eyes locked on the tree line beyond the firelight. I'd never seen her that way. I swept the area with a flashlight. Nothing. No shine of animal eyes, no flicker of motion. Just the woods, impossibly still, like it was holding its breath. That night, I made a perimeter alarm, an old trick I'd picked up years ago. I tied thin twine between the trees, threading it through metal washers and hanging an Altoids tin filled with nails to clink like a crude wind chime if disturbed. When I was tying the last loop, my flashlight beam caught something above me. Another rope. Old, frayed, nearly fused into the bark of the pine. Same nuts, same setup. Washers, tin, even nails. Someone else had made a perimeter here, long before me. I felt my stomach drop. This wasn't the first time someone had felt the need to guard this place. I cut the old rope down and shoved it into my pocket. Didn't tell the kids. Didn't want to see that kind of fear in their faces. Instead, I loaded my .45 and walked out to the fire ring. I fired 6 shots into the dirt, evenly spaced, not aiming at anything, just sending a message. We're not easy prey. The sound echoed through the hollow, rolled down the ridges, and then died too quickly. The woods swallowed it whole. After that, even the night sounds gave up. No crickets, no owls, no wind sighing through branches. Just that awful, crushing stillness again. I sat awake till dawn, Pike at my feet, both of us facing the ridge. The rope I'd tied swayed slightly, tapping against the tin. I don't remember falling asleep. But when I opened my eyes, the light was gray and thin, and the air felt heavy, like fog had weight. We packed up fast. No breakfast, no coffee, no talking. I had the kids cinch their straps tight, and we moved quick down the trail. By late morning, when the gravel road finally came into sight, I let myself breathe again. That's when I told them what I'd found the day before. The wrecked campsite, the old alarm line. Ava didn't say anything, just looked out the window the whole ride home. A year passed. I didn't tell anyone else about it, not the rangers, not friends. Just let it sit in that part of my memory where you keep things you're not ready to name. Then one night, flipping through channels, I landed on a documentary, Vanished, the Missing in the Mountains. They were covering unexplained disappearances across Appalachia. One segment caught my attention. A case from 2009. 3 hikers gone without a trace somewhere west of Spruce Knob. The camera zoomed in on a karst Map. A red circle appeared, marking the location where they were last seen. My stomach turned to stone. It was the same basin, the same hollow where Pike had frozen that day. I shut off the TV and sat there in the dark, feeling that silence creep back. The kind that hums just before you realize it's watching you again. Sometimes, when I take Pike out at night and the wind dies suddenly, I can almost hear the faint clink of metal washers swaying on unseen ropes, waiting for something that never quite leaves these mountains. I was 15 when my cousin Drew convinced me to spend a week camping with his family in the mountains. His dad had just bought a stretch of land somewhere near the Virginia-West Virginia border, deep in the Alleghenies. Not near a town, not close to a river or park trail, just miles of raw, wooded hills with no cabins, no fences, no driveways, no power lines. His dad called it a long-term investment. But to me, it looked like a patch of nowhere that even the map didn't want to claim. I remember watching the bars on my phone die one at a time as we climbed the old gravel road until it turned into a rutted path that chewed up the tires. By the time we reached the clearing, the phone in my pocket was just a shiny brick. No signal, no Wi-Fi, no hum of civilization. Just the restless whisper of wind through the trees and a single flat spot big enough to hold 5 tents. The fire ring we found there was rusted and half collapsed, probably built by hunters decades ago. We stacked a few stones, balanced an old grill grate over them, and pretended that counted as a kitchen. For 3 straight days, everything smelled like smoke and charred hot dogs. There were 9 of us that week. Drew's parents, his twin little brothers, another family they were close to who brought a boy and a girl both younger than 10, Drew and me. The adults sat in folding chairs drinking canned beer as if they were in their own backyard, even though there wasn't a bathroom or a single wooden bench for miles. The kids ran in a pack, shrieking through the trees, tripping on roots, turning their knees green with grass stains while their moms chased them with baby wipes. I was the oldest. Too old to join the games, too young to go off completely on my own. Which meant I was mostly invisible, and I liked that fine. I wandered the hills with a stick, kicking at loose bark, climbing ridges, and pretending to navigate using the compass app that no longer worked. There was something off about the land. Not haunted, not cursed. Just wrong in a quiet, geometric way. The hills folded in on themselves as though the landscape couldn't decide which way was up. I'd start hiking uphill, only to realize minutes later I was somehow below the camp again. The trees leaned at odd angles, as if gravity there was a rumor. Their trunks twisted sideways, decades of slow bending, like they were reaching for something that never came. On the second afternoon, Drew and I wandered down to the southern edge of the ridge, where the forest thinned and the ground sank into a shallow gully. That's when I saw it. At first, it looked like nothing. Just a narrow strip of dirt cutting through the brush, maybe a foot wide. But the more I stared, the stranger it seemed. It wasn't a deer trail. It was too clean, too even, like something had worn it down perfectly over time. The dirt was smooth, almost shaved, and the plants grew right up to the edges, but didn't cross over. No footprints, no trash, no broken branches, just that smooth, unnatural line winding away between the trees. I called Drew over. He squatted beside me, poked the dirt with a stick, and frowned. "That's not a game trail," he said, then stepped back fast, like he'd gotten too close to something sacred or dangerous. We marked the nearest tree with an X using my pocket knife. Not because we planned to return, but because leaving it unmarked felt wrong, like we had to acknowledge that it was there. We didn't say much walking back to camp. The silence felt heavy between us. That night, after dinner, one of the dads yelled out, "Who's up for manhunt?" And all hell broke loose. Every kid under 12 exploded with excitement, running in circles, begging for flashlights and headlamps. The rules were simple. Hide, don't get found, and if someone shouts your full name, you're out. The last one hiding wins. Drew and I got picked as the first runners, maybe because we were older, maybe because they thought we'd pick better spots. We were given 5 minutes to hide. At first, I jogged toward the clearing like everyone else, pretending to head for the usual hiding places. Behind the logs, under the tarps, near the coolers. But as soon as no one was looking, I turned and slipped down the slope toward the ridge. I moved fast but quiet, heart thudding, until I saw our carved X. The mark caught a glint of moonlight through the branches. I pushed the brush aside. The path was still there, clean, untouched. Without thinking much about it, I got down on my knees and crawled in. It closed around me quicker than I expected. The air changed. Cooler, heavier, dry like stone dust. After a few feet, I had to press my arms tight to my sides and pull forward with my elbows. The ground beneath me felt solid, not loose like dirt should, but packed, almost like hardened clay. It smelled faintly metallic, old, but not rotten. I noticed how sterile it was. No insects, no cobwebs, not even roots in the way. About 10 feet in, the tunnel sloped down sharply. I half slid, half scooted forward. It felt intentional, built to be just barely big enough for someone my size. The passage narrowed again. I had to turn my head sideways, cheeks scraping along the wall, dirt sticking to my skin. My heart hammered so loud it hurt. Then I saw something ahead. A fork. The main tunnel kept going straight, but off to the right was a smaller turnoff, almost hidden, barely visible in the dim light filtering from behind me. I don't know why, but I went that way. Some instinct whispered that I should. The side tunnel pinched tighter. I had to exhale to move at all. The silence was absolute, my own breathing loud in my ears. Then it opened abruptly into a small, hollowed-out space. I fumbled for my flashlight and clicked it on. The beam hit something in the far corner. A girl. She was curled up naked, knees to chest, arms wrapped around them. Her skin was pale, too pale, and covered in thin, straight cuts, hundreds of them. Some healed, some still raw. Her hair hung in clumps, tangled with leaves. Her eyes were open, glassy, unfocused, staring at the dirt wall like she'd been looking at it for days, my throat locked. I couldn't breathe. Heat flooded my body, and before I even realized it, my legs went warm. I'd pissed myself, frozen in place, body refusing to move. Then I heard it, behind me, a slow drag, elbows against earth, not the shuffle of an animal or the stumble of a human. This was deliberate, steady like something that had done it 1,000 times before. I switched off my flashlight. Instantly, the dark became suffocating. My pulse thundered in my ears. The sound of dragging grew louder. Metal clinked against the ground, something heavy being pulled, scraping, catching on roots. I tried to stop breathing. For a moment, everything went still. Then I exhaled, just a tiny, shaky sound. And the crawling started again, faster. I pressed myself into the dirt, heart going so hard I thought the sound alone would give me away. It drew closer, the scrape echoing through the tunnel, followed by breathing, dry, broken, wrong. It reached the junction just outside the hollow. I could feel it there, inches away, the air colder where it paused. Then, slowly, it moved past. Something heavy hit the ground a few feet farther down. metal on stone. Then came a voice, low, hoarse, like someone whose throat had forgotten how to form words. It made a guttural, angry noise that wasn't language, but still felt aimed at something or someone. I didn't wait. I started crawling backward, fast, scraping my elbows, tearing my shirt, banging my shoulder on the wall. I didn't care about the noise anymore. Dirt filled my mouth, grit under my nails. I reached the main tunnel, half blind, and kept pushing until the faint silver glow of moonlight appeared ahead. I lunged for it, hands shaking, and burst out into the open. Cold air hit my face. I didn't stop. Branches whipped my arms, roots snagged my boots, but I ran. Behind me came the unmistakable sound of something moving, crashing through the brush, faster than I wanted to believe it could move. I didn't look back. My lungs burned. I ran until the orange glow of campfires flickered through the trees, and the laughter of the younger kids reached my ears. I stumbled into the clearing and screamed. Everyone froze. Their flashlights swung toward me. I must have looked insane, muddy, scratched, trembling, my jeans soaked, my shirt ripped open at one shoulder. Drew's mom ran to me, shouting my name. I tried to speak, but no sound came at first. I could only point toward the ridge, gasping. When I finally found my voice, it cracked. There's a girl, and someone else down there. The adults' faces drained of color. Within minutes, they were gathering guns and flashlights, yelling to each other. Someone radioed for help using the truck's CB because no one had cell service. The sheriff's truck arrived just after dawn, lights off but siren ready. They swept the lower ridge with flashlights and dogs. I sat in the back of the pickup wrapped in a blanket, listening to the static on the deputy's radio. They found a man crouched at the base of the hill, near where the dirt trail disappeared into the brush. He had a knife and a black trash bag filled with tools, some homemade, some rusted, one of them streaked with dried blood. They wouldn't tell us more, wouldn't even confirm if they'd found the girl. By noon, they'd taped off the slope with yellow ribbon and wooden stakes. Drew's dad tried to sell the land the following spring. Nobody would take it. Too remote, too steep, too many whispers. Eventually, he stopped mentioning it altogether. Sometimes, when I think about that night, I can still feel the cold weight of the dirt pressing in, the sound of something crawling behind me, and the hollow stare of that girl who never moved, never blinked, like she'd been waiting there all along for someone to finally look back. Olivia had just finished a grueling 9-week wilderness program up in the northern reaches of the Allegheny Mountains. I never fully understood why she decided to do it, some kind of outdoor survival internship, part training, part spiritual detox, I think. But I had a feeling she needed to get away from the noise of everything. Truth be told, I did too. So when she called me near the end of it, saying she wanted me to meet her afterward, I said yes before she even finished asking. I rented a small cabin near Seneca Rocks, off one of those Forest Service roads that doesn't show up on regular GPS maps, the kind where the trees crowd so close together, you forget what an open horizon looks like. It was the sort of place that feels hidden on purpose, like someone had built it too deep in the woods and just left it there to rot quietly. The cabin was tiny. One room, a slumped mattress, a wood stove that looked like it hadn't been used since the 90s, and a welcome mat half swallowed by moss. The forest was already claiming it back. Still, there was a charm in that decay, a peace in its isolation. It felt like the world's noise couldn't touch it. Olivia showed up on the second day. She looked like she'd walked straight out of the mountain itself. Her clothes were worn, spattered with mud and sap, and she smelled like wood smoke and pine tar. She'd lost weight. But what really struck me was how grounded she looked, like her body and the land had come to some secret agreement. She didn't move like she used to. There was a quietness in her, deliberate and heavy. I could tell she'd left something of herself up there in those ridges, and maybe taken something back too. The first night, we didn't do much. She was tired, too tired to talk about the details of the program. I didn't press. We cooked canned chili on the stove, drank cheap beer, and listened to the woods creak as if the trees themselves were stretching after a long sleep. She didn't tell me what she'd seen or done out there, and I didn't ask. Some silences aren't meant to be filled. The next morning, she said she wanted to take me hiking. She'd marked a few old routes she used to explore during her solo weeks. These weren't tourist trails. No signs, no maintained paths. Just forgotten CC trails, ghost routes fading back into the hills. The kind of places only locals or wanderers ever find. We set out early, following faint ridges and collapsing stone foundations, half-eaten by moss. We passed an old fire tower that leaned so precariously I didn't dare stand beneath it, its steel ribs humming faintly in the wind. By noon, we'd bushwhacked for hours and stumbled into a clearing she remembered from one of her solo rotations. It wasn't much, just an open patch of grass hemmed in by trees. A single weathered survey marker sticking out of the dirt like a gravestone, and a charred stump split down the middle. She said this had been her thinking spot, a place she went to be alone, where she'd sit for hours and listen to the silence. I tried to see what she saw in it, but it didn't feel peaceful. It felt empty, forgotten, heavy. The air in that clearing was still in a way that didn't feel natural. Like it wasn't just quiet, it was waiting. I couldn't shake the feeling that we weren't supposed to be there. Like someone had left something behind and the place was holding its breath for them to return. We didn't linger long. The sun was already starting to sink, bleeding gold between the trees, and our legs ached from the hike. When we got back to the gravel road, Olivia pulled out her phone. Barely a flicker of signal, just enough to open her rideshare app. She'd used it before, back in Elkins, and said it usually worked even out here. 2 nearby drivers popped up, one 40 minutes away, another only a few miles out. She tapped the closer one. I didn't check my phone at all. Mine hadn't had service since the morning. 10 minutes passed before we heard it. Tires crunching over gravel, slow and steady. A gray pickup truck appeared around the bend, crawling toward us like it was feeling its way through the road. It didn't park at the trailhead like drivers usually do. Instead, it eased to a stop at an odd angle by the tree line. Headlights dimmed. The whole truck was caked in dust and dirt. The rear window was smeared over completely with greasy handprints and grime. There were no license plates that I could see. Olivia glanced down at her phone, then back up at the truck. "That must be him," she said. Something about it made my stomach twist. The way it had parked, maybe. Or that the driver hadn't rolled down the window. But I didn't say anything. Olivia walked over, pulled open the back door, and leaned in. "You the ride?" she asked. The man inside didn't answer. He just nodded once. No words, no smile, just that single, flat motion. Olivia hesitated and climbed in. I followed, my hand resting on the door handle for a second too long. Something about the air felt thick, like the moment before a storm. But she was already inside, so I got in after her. The door shut behind me with a solid click. The truck started rolling forward. Still, the man said nothing. His hands were locked at 10 and 2, pale knuckles rigid. The smell inside was bad, like wet rope, motor oil, and old sweat baked into the seats. The hum of the engine filled the silence. 5 minutes in, Olivia tapped my knee and lifted her phone toward me. Her GPS showed something strange. The little blue dot that represented us was sliding west, far from the road that should have taken us back toward the cabin. It wasn't even near the route she'd set as the pickup location. We were drifting into blank, unmarked territory, deep forest roads that didn't exist on the app. Then her phone buzzed again. A message. "Hi, Olivia. I'm here. Are you close?" She stared at the screen. The profile photo wasn't of the man driving us. The car listed was a dark blue sedan, not a truck. A cold feeling flooded through me. My throat went dry. We weren't in the right vehicle. We weren't even with a verified driver. I looked up at the rearview mirror. His eyes were visible there, dark, flat, expressionless. He hadn't said one word since we climbed in, not even when she'd asked his name. I leaned forward slowly, trying to sound calm. "Hey man," I said. "We actually need to stop up here. Change of plans." No response. He didn't blink. He didn't even twitch. The truck's engine growled louder as his foot pressed the gas. "Hey," I said again, louder now. "Pull over." Nothing. That was when something in me shifted. Not fear exactly, but clarity. Cold, sharp instinct. This wasn't some misunderstanding. This wasn't the wrong car. It was something worse. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out my folding knife. Small, but sharp. Something I'd carried since college. More habit than necessity. I flicked the blade open, steadying my voice as I leaned closer to the seat. "You're not our driver," I said. "Stop this truck right now, or I swear to God." His eyes flicked to the mirror for the first time, catching mine. They didn't look afraid. Just hollow, like the lights were on, but nobody was home. He turned back to the road, calm as ever. The truck jerked hard to the side, gravel spitting under the tires, and came to a violent stop that threw both of us forward. The doors clicked, the locks disengaged with a heavy metallic thunk. Olivia didn't hesitate. She flung her door open and jumped out before the truck even stopped rolling completely. I followed, hitting the dirt just as the driver slammed the gas again. The truck roared past, spraying us with gravel as it tore down the road and vanished around the bend. For a long moment, neither of us said a word. The woods were quiet again, almost too quiet. Olivia's hands were shaking as she tried to pull up her phone, her face pale in the dying light. I took it gently from her. The app was still open. The real driver, the one in the blue sedan, had just messaged again, saying she was still waiting at the trailhead. 10 minutes later, headlights swept the trees from the opposite direction. A dark blue sedan rolled up, exactly like the profile photo. A woman about our age sat behind the wheel, reflective vest over her jacket. She rolled down the window and held up her phone with Olivia's name displayed on the screen. We didn't need to say much. One look at us and she knew something was wrong. We climbed in. She didn't ask questions right away, just started driving back toward the main road. When we finally told her what happened, she went quiet for a long time. Then softly she said, "You're not the first ones. There have been a few others these past weeks. They hang around trailheads, pick up tourists who don't double-check." No one spoke after that. The hum of the tires on asphalt filled the silence like static. When we finally reached the cabin, I called the sheriff's office. The deputy on the phone sounded concerned, asked for details, promised someone would follow up. I gave everything I could remember: the truck, the missing plates, the man's face, the smell. The road. He said they'd send someone out. No one ever did. That's the part that sticks with me. Not that we were almost taken. Not even the silence from the cops. It's the look that man gave me when I held the knife. The lack of fear. The way his eyes stayed flat. Like he'd been through this before. Like he knew it wasn't his only chance. Sometimes, when I think about that night, I still hear the crunch of gravel behind us. Slow and deliberate, the sound of an engine humming somewhere out there in the dark woods. Waiting for someone else who doesn't double-check. My shift at the fire tower always started before dawn. I had signed up for the job through a university wilderness research program, mostly because I needed the credits, and partly because my cousin Wes, who worked with the state forestry department, had vouched for me. He said, "Tower 9 up at Frost Hollow is always open. You'll have it to yourself all season." That sounded perfect. 40 feet up in the air, surrounded by nothing but the whispering canopy of trees and an ocean of sky. No roommates, no noise, no one to bother me. The tower was one of those older steel frame lookouts, built back when the mountains were first being surveyed. The kind that groaned and swayed slightly when the wind picked up. A skeletal ladder running straight up the side to a single square cabin with windows on every wall and a trapdoor that locked from inside. Basically, an aging adult's version of a treehouse, but lonelier. The climb was fine unless it rained. Then the metal steps turned slick enough to make you think twice about your life choices. The job wasn't glamorous. I logged weather patterns, cloud formations, wind changes, radioed in reports about controlled burns or wildlife sightings. Most of the time, though, it was just staring out into the endless green folds of the Cumberland Mountains, tracing ridges that rolled away into nothing. There was no internet. Barely a cell signal, no distractions at all. That's what I liked about it. It gave me room to breathe, to think without the static of the world pressing in. That Wednesday, my shift began at 4:45 a.m. The forest was still wrapped in fog, and the gravel crunched quietly under my boots as I climbed. Dew clung to the railing like beads of glass. Every breath I took came out in a white puff that lingered and dissolved. Once at the top, I unlocked the trapdoor, hoisted myself into the little cabin, and went through my morning routine. Checked the barometer, logged the humidity, temperature, and wind. Nothing unusual. The woods below were still asleep, draped in mist like a secret. By midday, I'd finished both thermoses of coffee and had begun flipping through the old maps that someone had left behind years ago. Laminated trail charts so faded, they looked like pale ghosts of their former selves. I'd gotten into the habit of tracing the decommissioned routes with my finger, following the dotted lines of paths that hadn't existed for decades. The forest had taken them back, swallowed them whole, but their memory still lingered in those maps. At around 4:20 p.m., I raised the binoculars for my usual sweep of the western perimeter. The light was starting to shift, bright gold slipping into the cooler haze of late afternoon. The wind had picked up, carrying the faint scent of rain. I scanned the ridges one by one, methodical, slow. Then something caught my eye. A man. He was cutting straight through the pines, moving fast, too fast for someone off trail. He wasn't on any established route, and he wasn't dressed for hiking. No pack, no hat, no jacket, nothing. Just dark clothes clinging to him like wet bark. The way he moved was wrong, too fluid for the thick brush he was pushing through. I couldn't make out his face, but his stride was steady, almost purposeful. I adjusted the focus, tried to follow him, but after a few moments, he disappeared behind a cluster of hemlocks and didn't reappear. I radioed down to base. Control, this is Tower 9. Do we have any registered hikers near the western perimeter, north side of the old fire break? Static. I waited, repeated the call. Control, this is Tower 9. Come in. Nothing. Just the soft hiss of empty air. I wrote the sighting down in my logbook anyway. Time, direction, approximate distance. Probably just a ranger or someone who wandered too far off a back road. People got lost up here all the time. The sun dipped low and shadows stretched long between the trees. At 5:36, the radio crackled to life. I jumped at the sound, leaned forward, and reached for the receiver. Except it wasn't a voice. Knock, knock. Two distinct, deliberate taps, like someone rapping their knuckles gently against wood. I froze, hand hovering over the mic. It didn't sound like interference or static. It sounded human. I pressed the button. Control, do you copy that? Repeat, I heard something on the line. It sounded like knocking. The radio hissed, then again. Knock, knock. Same rhythm, same tone. No background noise, no variation, just the sound. It was too crisp, too close, like it had happened inside the tower instead of through the radio. I stared at the receiver for a long minute, every nerve in my body tight. The wind had died completely. The forest was silent in that strange, suffocating way that makes your ears ring. I switched the radio off. By 6:10, the air had changed again. The kind of shift you can't describe, only feel. A subtle weight of attention, like something unseen had crept closer. I sat still, listening. Then I heard it, a faint thud beneath the floor, followed by another. Slow, heavy, deliberate. Something was pacing around the base of the tower. I could feel the vibrations through the steel floor. I grabbed my flashlight and edged toward the trapdoor. The handle felt icy in my palm. I hesitated, then opened it and climbed halfway down the ladder. The rungs groaned under my boots. I swept the light across the clearing. Nothing. The clearing itself looked different. The ground was uneven, disturbed. Right beneath the ladder was a mound of fresh leaves. I knew it hadn't been there that morning. I always checked below before climbing up, a habit drilled into me by Wes. Always make sure nothing's waiting under your tower. The pile wasn't random. It was too neat, almost circular. My heart was pounding. I climbed the rest of the way down, keeping the light trained on it. When I nudged the leaves aside with my boot, something metal caught the beam. It was an old trail marker, the kind used decades ago before the modern ones replaced them. Rusted, edges curled inward, splintered bits of wood still clinging to the back where it had been ripped from a post or tree. The paint was mostly gone, but I could just make out faint red lettering. Tour 9. I crouched to pick it up. The air felt thicker now, pressing against my chest. Then came the sound, a soft thunk behind me. I spun around. Sitting in the dirt, half covered in pine needles, was a small cassette recorder. The kind people used in the 70s. Silver casing, scratched to hell, a cracked plastic window revealing the spools inside. A red recording light blinked faintly. I picked it up with shaking hands and pressed stop. The light died. Then, clear as anything, from somewhere I couldn't see, knock, knock. Same rhythm, same tone. Perfect. I dropped the recorder. It hit the ground with a muffled thud. My flashlight trembled as I swung it toward the tree line. That's when I saw it. Something standing just beyond the clearing. A figure. Tall, still, wrapped in a coat too thick for the mild evening air. The coat fluttered faintly, even though there was no breeze. The figure didn't move, didn't breathe. I couldn't make out a face. just darkness where features should have been. But I could feel its gaze. It felt wrong, distorted, like the air between us had stretched too far, warped by distance that shouldn't exist. I didn't think. I ran, boots slipping over damp needles, hands scraping the ladder rungs as I climbed. I didn't look down. I didn't need to. The feeling that something stood directly beneath me was enough to drive me faster. I slammed the hatch shut, twisted the lock, and collapsed against it. Flashlight pointed straight down. My chest heaved. I tried the radio again. Nothing. The emergency line clicked once, then died completely. I sat there for hours, flashlight still on, too afraid to move. I must have drifted off at some point because when I opened my eyes again, it was light. Morning sunlight slanted through the glass, bright and clean. I stayed frozen for a while, listening. No knocks, no footsteps, just the familiar groan of metal in the wind. When I finally worked up the nerve to climb down, I did it slow, each step deliberate. The clearing looked untouched again, like nothing had happened, except the leaves under the tower were still there. Only now, the trail marker was gone. So was the recorder. I crouched low, tracing the dirt around the base, and that's when I saw them. Footprints, not boots, not shoes. Bare feet, long, narrow, deep in the mud. They circled the tower, once, twice, 3 times, then veered off into the trees. I didn't log any of it. I just packed my things, drove straight back to the ranger station, left the keys on the hook, and told them flatly, I'm not taking another shift at Frost Hollow. Not next week, not ever. Wes didn't argue. He just gave me a long look, like he already knew. The whole drive back down the mountain, I kept glancing in the rearview mirror. The road behind me twisted endlessly through the trees, sunlight flickering across the windshield. But every now and then, between the turns, I thought I saw movement on the ridges. Something tall, still, watching from the tree line. When I finally reached the highway, I turned off the radio in my truck. The static had started up again. 2 faint taps, rhythmic and patient, echoing softly from the speaker. Knock, knock. My cousins Ethan and Cal drove up from Roanoke to spend the weekend. Nothing planned, no schedules, just a vague idea of good food, a fire, and some time away from everything. By Saturday evening, we were restless, tired of sitting around the cabin, bored of scrolling through playlists and sipping cheap beer. We wanted something different. No bars, no people, no lights. Just us, the woods, and the kind of quiet you only find when you're far from anyone else. Cal mentioned this old logging site near the Blue Ridge Range, a clearing he and some friends had stumbled across a few summers back. Said it was a bowl in the trees, a natural hollow that sat hidden between the ridge lines, 40 minutes from the nearest dirt road. According to him, it was perfect. You could yell your lungs out and no one would hear you. We threw things together fast. Ethan brought 2 bottles of whiskey, one expensive, one cheap, without asking whose they were. I packed sandwiches, jerky, and an old blanket. Cal grabbed a deck of cards and, predictably, forgot batteries for his flashlight. We piled into Ethan's truck and drove the narrow, twisting roads as the sun began bleeding out over the mountains. The light was fading fast by the time we reached the gravel turnout where the trail supposedly began. The path wasn't much of a trail at all. It was more like a scar across the hillside. A faint, worn impression of where something once passed through years ago. We went single file, pushing through the brush, the slope rising steep and close on our left, the air getting cooler with every step. It was the kind of hike that makes you aware of how alone you are. No highway hum, no planes overhead, just our boots crunching leaves and the slow, rhythmic sound of our breathing. By the time we reached the clearing, the road behind us had vanished into darkness. Cal hadn't exaggerated. It really was a bowl, a wide, hidden depression between ridges, the ground blanketed in old pine needles and soft moss. On one side, a sheer rock wall caught the firelight of sunset, and on the other, the woods pressed close, the trees leaning in, as if curious to see who had entered their space. The place was almost too perfect, isolated, untouched, silent. A ring of old stones marked a fire pit, blackened by use long ago. Someone had been here once, but not recently. We dropped our packs and gathered wood, laughing when Cal tried to light damp twigs with a lighter he swore never fails. In 20 minutes, we had a decent fire going, tall and strong, the flames flickering orange against the cliff face. Ethan uncorked one of the whiskey bottles, except we didn't actually have a corkscrew. "Anyone pack one?" he asked. We all froze, looked at each other. Bags came open, food spilled out, not a corkscrew in sight. Cal tried stabbing the cork with his car key. The key snapped clean off. Ethan started smacking the bottom of the bottle against a rock like a caveman trying to summon modern convenience. I stopped him before he shattered it. "You break it. We're drinking smoke and glass." He laughed but stepped back. "Fine, hero. What's your solution?" "I'll go back," I said. Ethan frowned. "It's a 40-minute walk, man." "More like 30, I said, grabbing the flashlight. "Just don't screw with me while I'm gone." Cal held up both hands. "Cross my heart. We'll stay right here." "Then I want the hatchet," I said, nodding at the one strapped to his pack. He handed it over without argument. The forest swallowed me the second I stepped past the glow of the fire. The air shifted, colder, heavier, soaked with the smell of wet leaves and mud. My flashlight beam danced across roots and ferns, and the sound of the woods pressed in close. It felt alive, moving even when it wasn't. 10 minutes in, I heard something to my left. Not a squirrel or a rabbit. Heavier. A slow, dragging sound, followed by the crack of twigs. I froze. Then came a grunt. Low, guttural, wet. Not quite human, not quite animal. My stomach turned to ice. I thought of wild hogs. The region had them, mean as hell and unpredictable. You don't run from hogs, they chase. So I just walked, steady, flashlight aimed low. My breath came hard and fast, fogging in the beam. Another noise, closer now, a scrape through the underbrush. When I finally saw the shimmer of gravel ahead, I almost laughed. The truck was right where we left it, and the sound of civilization, even if it was just the ticking of the cooling engine, felt like a blessing. I climbed in, grabbed the corkscrew from the glove box, and sat there a moment, breathing. My pulse was still hammering. My aunt's house wasn't far, just down the hill, so I stopped in. She was in the kitchen, wiping the counter. "Back already?" she asked. "Forgot something?" "Corkscrew," I said, trying to sound casual. "Might have heard a hog out there." She smiled faintly. "Then maybe don't linger." "Yeah," I muttered, pocketing the corkscrew and heading out again. This time I took the field road, a wider route that cut across an old tobacco patch. Easier walking, no shadows pressing in from both sides. The moon was up now, casting everything in silver. When I reached the bowl again, the fire was still going, tall flames licking at the night air. For a moment, it looked exactly as I'd left it. Bags scattered, food untouched. Except there was no one there. I waited, expecting a shout, a laugh, some kind of boo from the trees. Nothing. The forest was still. The fire popped quietly, sending up sparks that vanished into the dark. I called out their names. Once, twice. No answer. I sat down on a log, the corkscrew in my hand, the hatchet across my lap. The silence pressed harder. I told myself it was a prank. They'd promised they wouldn't mess with me, but this had Cal written all over it. Another 5 minutes passed. Then I heard it, a faint rustle just beyond the tree line. Someone or something was moving. "Ethan," I called, standing. The movement stopped. I swung the flashlight toward the noise. The beam caught a figure standing between two trees, tall, motionless. A hood pulled low, face hidden in shadow. "Cal?" No answer. The figure turned, slowly, deliberately, and slipped deeper into the woods, vanishing behind the pines. My phone buzzed in my pocket, the sudden vibration nearly making me drop the light. It was Cal. I answered fast. "You think this is funny?" I said. Static crackled. Then his voice came through, low, shaky. "We're not there." "What?" "We heard something in the woods. Thought it was you. We grabbed our phones and went back to your aunt's place." I stared at the fire. The figure's last position burned into my mind. What do you mean? You're at the house?" "Yeah, she's here. She said you hadn't come back yet." The back of my neck went cold. Cal's voice tightened. "Listen to me, man. Get out. Don't wait. Leave everything and come back right now." I whispered. "No. You come here. Now." Static hissed. Then quietly, "Please don't stay." I hung up. The night felt thicker, heavier, like the trees were leaning closer. I stepped back until my shoulders hit the rock wall. The hatchet felt small in my hands. The fire crackled once and then seemed to go quieter, as if the woods themselves were muffling it. Every sound from earlier, the scrape, the grunt, the rustle, flooded back into my mind. Then I saw movement again. Not from the trees this time, from the ground. Something was shifting in the shadows just beyond the firelight. Too low to be a person, too deliberate to be an animal. I gripped the hatchet tighter, breath shallow, watching. Minutes passed, maybe more. Then a pair of beams cut through the woods. Flashlights, bouncing, getting closer. "Liam!" Ethan's voice. I stumbled toward the light. Relief hit me so hard my knees nearly gave out. They stepped into the clearing, faces pale, eyes wide. Cal looked like he'd run the whole way. We stood in silence for a while, the fire painting our faces orange. Ethan laughed too loud, trying to break the tension. Cal cracked a joke about bears. Nobody really responded. We said we'd stay a bit longer, finish the whiskey, pretend everything was fine. But none of us meant it. We doused the fire, left the food, the cards, the second bottle. The forest watched us in silence as we climbed out of that bowl, single file, the dark pressing in behind us. We didn't speak until we reached the truck. Cal's hands were shaking as he fumbled the keys. Ethan turned to me, eyes wide. "When you came back," he said quietly, "did you see it?" I didn't answer, because I didn't want to say yes. But I did. And I'll never forget the way it turned its head, slow and steady, like it was waiting for me to look back. I had just started a temporary position with the Forest Service in one of the more isolated stretches of the Appalachian Mountains. This time up in the northern range, somewhere along the Pennsylvania-West Virginia border. They called the position Trail Warden, which made it sound far more official than it really was. The work was all physical: clearing debris, repainting trail markers, replacing signposts, recording mileage, and logging any damage or strange activity. When I first heard the description, it sounded simple. peaceful, exactly what I needed. I'd spent the last few months trying to disappear from people, from the looks, from the questions I didn't want to answer. The idea of being alone in the woods for weeks at a time, with nothing but my own routine and the trees, sounded like mercy. The forestry office assigned me to a rundown cabin about 2 miles off a forgotten service road that branched from the old Monongahela scenic byway. The cabin looked like it had been abandoned decades ago. Gray boards warped from age, steps that creaked with every shift of weight, and a roofline that sagged just enough to make me nervous during storms. The smell inside hit me right away. Something between mildew, cold ashes, and wet rust. No plumbing, no power, no phone line. Definitely no cell service. The only way to reach anyone was through an old, temperamental field radio that only seemed to work when the sky was clear and I angled the antenna just right. None of that bothered me. I had come there for the quiet, the solitude. I brought my dog, Mara, a large mixed breed with the body of a shepherd and the head of something heavier, almost wolfish. She was quiet and serious, a dog that didn't bark unless there was a reason. She was also the only reason I didn't feel entirely alone that first week. Those first few days were almost idyllic. I'd hike trails at dawn, clear fallen limbs, repaint markers, take my notes, and return to the cabin by evening. The nights were calm, cool, the silence so thick it became almost a sound of its own. It wasn't until day 7 that things began to shift. That morning, I hiked a switchback I had just finished clearing the day before. I knew every bend, every cut of the shovel, every stone I'd moved. That's why I noticed the pile immediately. Right in the middle of the trail sat a small stack of rocks. 5 of them, each flat, each balanced perfectly on the other. On top, like a deliberate finishing touch, lay a strip of bark, smooth and rectangular, placed so precisely it looked ceremonial. I stared at it for a while, trying to decide if it was just a bored hiker's handiwork. It wasn't unusual for people to leave little cairns along trails as markers or jokes. Still, it unsettled me. Something about the symmetry, the precision, it didn't feel casual. I nudged it with my boot, knocking it down, then brushed the stones into the brush. By the time I got back to the cabin that evening, I had mostly forgotten about it. The next day, when I walked the same trail again, the pile was back. Same number of stones, same arrangement, same bark sitting flat on top. Except this time, when I crouched down to look closer, I realized the bark wasn't blank. Carved into the surface, roughly and unevenly, was a name. My name. Ellie. The letters were jagged, almost frantic. Too deep to have been scratched with a fingernail, but sloppy enough that I doubted a knife had been used. I stood there staring at it for a long time. I hadn't told anyone at the station my full name. Only the supervisor who'd processed my paperwork even knew it, and the cabin was 2 miles off-road. I hadn't seen a single person since I'd arrived. I snapped a picture with my phone, no service, but I figured I could show it later, and radioed it in when I got back. The ranger who usually answered, a guy named Miller, picked up. He sounded distracted when I explained. "Probably just locals screwing around," he said. "Some of the kids from the ridge like to play pranks on new workers. Don't engage, just take notes and move on." So I kicked the pile over again, tossed the bark deep into the woods, and hiked back. That night was quiet, almost too quiet. Mara didn't sleep near the door like she usually did. She sat up, ears twitching at nothing, eyes fixed on the black window pane. Around midnight, I heard it. A long, dragging scrape against the front door. Not claws, not branches. It was deliberate, slow, metallic, like something hard being pulled across the wood from top to bottom. I froze. Mara let out a low growl that I'd never heard from her before, deep and constant. I waited, flashlight in hand, until the noise stopped. When I finally opened the door, there was nothing there, just the trees swaying and the smell of cold earth. In the morning, I saw the handprints, 2 of them, side by side on the glass panel next to the door. They were oily, almost translucent, as if left by greasy palms. The fingers were long, too long, and the spacing between them wasn't right, too wide, too stretched. They trailed downward, leaving faint streaks where they'd been dragged. I wiped them away, but the glass clouded under the rag, as if the prints had stained it from the inside somehow. By day 10, the unease had settled into me like a sickness. I'd hear footsteps outside after dark, never running, never frantic, just walking. Slow, deliberate, pausing every few beats as if listening. I stopped opening the door at night, stopped checking the window. Mara refused to go near the entryway at all, preferring to pace the corners of the cabin, growling softly under her breath. Then the rocks came back. This time, there was one on the porch. The next day, another appeared inside the woodshed, perfectly centered on top of my toolbox. Always the same formation. 5 flat stones, a piece of bark on top. A few of the bark pieces had my name again, carved so deeply that the letters flaked. One had something different, a date. 3 days ahead. I radioed the station again, but no one responded. Static hissed, sputtered, then cut out completely. I tried again and again, until finally someone answered. The voice wasn't Miller's. It wasn't anyone I recognized. "You weren't supposed to move the stones," the man said. Then the line went dead. That night, Mara refused to sleep at all. She stayed beside me, hackles raised, eyes fixed on the door. I lit every lantern I had, and still the darkness outside seemed to press harder against the windows, breathing down the glass. The shadows felt alive, restless, waiting for something. I held my knife and sat awake till dawn, afraid to blink. The next morning, I found the stones inside the cabin. I'd only stepped out for a few minutes to fetch water from the pump. When I came back in, the stack was sitting neatly on my cot. 5 stones. One piece of bark split in 2. On one half, E. On the other, LLI. That broke something in me. I grabbed Mara's leash, my knife, and my keys. No bag, no food, no supplies. I didn't even bother to lock the door. I just ran, straight down the ridge behind the cabin, cutting through brush, slipping on moss and roots, not caring. Mara stayed right beside me, silent except for her panting. We didn't stop until the sky started turning gray. When the forest finally gave way to the old service road, I collapsed on the gravel, holding Mara so tightly she whined. At some point, a ranger truck pulled up. The man inside said something I barely heard. "You look like you've been out here a while," I think he said. I just nodded and let them help me into the cab. They went back for my things later that afternoon. Everything was still there, the lanterns, the food, the gear, except for one thing, the cot. It was gone. No drag marks, no splinters, no trace that it had ever existed at all. They asked if I was sure I'd left it there. I told them yes, absolutely. I told them about the stones, about the carvings, about the voice on the radio. They exchanged a look I didn't like and wrote something down on a clipboard. That was weeks ago. I'm staying with my sister now, in a little apartment in Pittsburgh. Every night I leave a light on. Mara sleeps beside the bed. Last night, when I went to get water, I noticed something on the kitchen counter. 5 small stones, stacked perfectly, a piece of bark resting on top. The cut through the middle was still fresh. I was 7 months sober when I started working for Hale in Tallow Creek, Tennessee. I'd been sleeping in what used to be a supply closet behind a thrift store. The owner, an old woman named Jan, let me stay there as long as I took out the trash and didn't bring anyone around. It wasn't much. Bare walls, one mattress, a single light bulb. But it was shelter. And it kept me away from the people I used to know, the ones who looked at me like they were waiting for me to fall apart again. Hale ran a weathered supply shack on the edge of town, the kind of place you'd drive past without realizing it existed. It sold camping gear, firewood, cheap lighters, jerky, and those overpriced emergency rations for tourists heading into the Smoky Mountain trails. There wasn't even a proper sign out front, just a warped, open sticker in the window and a rusted bell above the door that didn't ring anymore. Hale needed someone who didn't ask questions and didn't mind hauling heavy boxes up logging roads that weren't even on the map. I needed something to do that didn't leave room for thinking. It worked for both of us. We didn't talk about our lives. He handed me tasks, paid me in cash, and didn't pry. I didn't ask him where the deliveries came from or who they were for. Silence was our agreement, and I respected that. It was late October when things changed. The air had that sharp edge it gets before the real cold moves in. I was organizing fuel canisters when Hale came through the back door without knocking. He never knocked, just appeared like he'd always been standing there. He had a folded sheet of paper in his hand. "Need a run up to Dry Bluff Ridge," he said, his voice rough like gravel. "Cabin drop, big list. You'll have to haul it in yourself." I took the paper and scanned it. Canned beans, salt, paraffin oil, rope, kerosene, blankets, normal stuff. But the name of the place caught me off guard. "Dry Bluff Ridge?" I asked. "That even a real spot?" He scratched the side of his neck without looking up. "Not on any regular map. You'll take the old forestry road past McKinnon's Bridge. When you hit the split with the rusted sign, head left. Trail runs another 6, maybe 7 miles. You'll see the cabin when you're there." I frowned. "You sure anyone's out there?" He paused, eyes still on the list. "They paid in advance. Left a note. Just set the crates in the main room and go. Don't knock." The sun was already leaning west, spilling that strange orange light through the windows. "Why tonight?" I asked. "We can't wait till morning." He looked up for the first time, and something in his eyes made my chest tighten. "Because I want you back before dark," he said quietly. "That place isn't good after sundown." He didn't say it like a warning. He said it like a fact. I loaded up the Jeep, 2 crates strapped tight, a few extra cans of kerosene, my thermos of burnt coffee, and a stale sandwich in my coat pocket. The drive was long and empty. Gravel snapped under the tires, and the woods pressed close on both sides like the world was narrowing. I didn't see a single car after I turned off the main road. When I finally found the fire road Hale described, it was marked only by a leaning stake of rusted metal and an old rope swing that creaked even without wind. The trail itself was barely visible, just a narrow scar through overgrowth. I parked beneath a crooked birch, tied my sled to the back of my pack, and started walking. Every step sounded too loud in the silence. No insects, no wind. Just the sound of my boots sucking through mud and the low drag of the crates behind me. After about an hour, the path bent sharply, then dipped into a ravine slick with moss and damp leaves. I climbed out on the far side and froze. The cabin sat there, silent, sunken, almost blending into the hill like it had grown from the dirt. The wood had gone soft and gray, the porch sagged, and the shutters were nailed shut. But it wasn't a ruin. It looked maintained. Someone had kept it upright, just enough to keep it alive. I climbed the steps and knocked out of habit. The door swung open with almost no resistance. Inside, the air was cold and stale, a mix of old paper, dried sap, and something faintly acidic that stung my nose. The place was clean, too clean. Canned food stacked in neat rows, a rifle on hooks above a stone fireplace, boots by the door, a bed made with precision. But there was no dust, no warmth, no mess. It felt staged, like a picture of what a home was supposed to look like. I set the crates near the door and left. I didn't bother to close it quietly. The silence felt heavy behind me, like it was pressing me out. I was halfway down the ridge when I heard it. A voice, soft, calm, like someone speaking across a dinner table. "Hey." I stopped. It came from behind me, maybe 20 feet. I turned slowly. Nothing. No one on the trail. No movement. No sound but my own heartbeat. The air was thick, like I didn't want to carry sound anymore. I stood there for what felt like a minute before forcing myself to keep walking. Faster now, eyes flicking between the trees. Every shape looked wrong, like the forest itself was watching. I was almost to the jeep when I saw them. 3 figures standing in the middle of the trail. They didn't move, didn't speak. For a moment, I thought they were hunters, locals maybe. But their clothes weren't right. They wore what looked like animal hides, crudely stitched together, patchy fur hanging in strips. Their heads were covered in skulls, real ones. Deer, maybe. Massive antlers curved upward, cracked and green with moss. One of them had what looked like dried blood smeared across the jawbone of his mask. I stopped dead. My throat closed up. "I don't want trouble," I said slowly, raising my hands. "Just trying to get back to town." No one answered. Then the one in the middle lifted something long and heavy, an old rifle, the kind with a wooden stock and a rusted barrel. I ran, dropped the sled, dropped the rope, just ran. Branches tore at my coat, my lungs felt like fire, my boots slipping on mud. Behind me came the hiss of something. Not a word, not a shout, just breath forced through a broken mouth. Then the rifle cracked, and the tree beside me exploded in splinters. I didn't stop. I don't remember the rest clearly. Just flashes. The glow of my jeep through the trees, the sound of my own screaming, the feeling of metal under my palms as I slammed against the hood. The engine stuttered, then caught on the 3rd try. I drove like the devil himself was clawing at my back. I didn't look in the mirrors. I didn't want to see if they were there. When I finally pulled into the lot behind the outfitter, the sun was gone. Hale's truck wasn't there. I went to the door. Locked. The window next to it was cracked open, so I peeked inside. The room was a mess. Glass shattered across the floor, papers scattered, a chair overturned, like someone had fought to get out. I waited in the jeep for over an hour. No lights in the building, no sound, but the crickets and the soft hum of my engine. The next morning, I went to the sheriff's office. Told them everything: the delivery, the figures, the rifle, the cabin. The deputy at the desk didn't laugh. He didn't even blink. He just asked, "You say they had skulls?" I nodded. He stared at me for a long time, then leaned forward. "Don't go back that way," he said. "Not ever." That was it. He didn't take notes, didn't ask for a statement, just stared until I left. 3 days later, they found Hale. A hunter found the body wedged between 2 rocks in a hollow about 12 miles from the ridge. His jaw was broken in 3 places. His throat. It had been torn open like something had tried to dig inside. But there wasn't a drop of blood, not on the ground, not on his clothes. Just dry, pale skin and an expression like he'd died seeing something he couldn't understand. There were no tracks, no drag marks. Nothing but Hale, sitting upright between those stones, hands folded in his lap. I left that night. Didn't even pack the rest of my things. I drove north until I hit Kentucky, then east until the mountains were behind me. I found work loading freight at a warehouse in Charleston. Cold, heavy work, but safe. I don't talk to anyone. I don't tell stories. I don't even say my real name anymore. Sometimes, when the nights are quiet and the wind shifts, I swear I can smell that same faint mix of mold and rust, like the cabin air followed me. And once, driving home after a late shift, I thought I saw something at the tree line off the highway. 3 figures, still as stone, heads crowned with antlers. But I didn't stop to look. I never will.